Ord Charles Wingate was born into a British military family and was taught by his mother to memorize the entire Old Testament. Ord studied at the Royal Military Academy, became a gunnery officer, studied the Arabic language, and was eventually posted to Palestine under the British Mandate. His very first evening in Haifa, Ord paid a visit to the chief intelligence officer of the Haganah. At that time, it was an underground defense force. Ord told the soldier in his usual direct way that he would have to fight for a free Palestine, and he'd have to win. And prodding the Israeli in his chest, he added, "And you will not win, my friend, unless I teach you how to fight and I lead you into battle." Ord loved being in Palestine. All the places he read about in the Old Testament came alive before his eyes. He often sat on Mount Tabor, singing the Psalms in his rapidly improving Hebrew. As his love for the land of the Jewish people grew, his determination grew to regain that land for the Jewish people. He was willing to fight against the Arabs if necessary, and even his own country, Britain. Now, their previous experiences with British officers made the Haganah very, very slow to trust him, but they soon learned that he was bold, eccentric, a brilliant tactician, a person of great physical endurance, and a fierce warrior, as well as a loner and an outsider. He created special night squads, armed groups of British soldiers and Haganah volunteers who were trained under his leadership. One night, Ord led a raid on an Arab base where his forces killed the terrorists and punished the people for harboring them. And hearing about the raid, his British superiors were furious. And from then on, every Jew in the underground army trusted Ord with his life. While his superiors thought Ord was protecting the oil pipeline from sabotage, he was actually leading Jewish soldiers in reprisal raids against Arab gangs. He became a legend among the Jews of Palestine, and the Arabs put a price on his head. He started a school for training Jewish soldiers in the art of guerrilla warfare, and many of those trainees became officers in the future Israeli army. The more they learned from him, the better soldiers they became. The better soldiers they were, the more successful they were in warfare. Ord was eventually banished from Palestine by his superiors and forced to return to Britain. He advised world leaders from Churchill to Roosevelt. He became a major general, and he died in a plane crash during World War II. But he remains a hero in Israel. He was called the father of the Israeli army, and Moshe Dayan said, "He taught us everything we know." Today, a Jewish settlement, a youth village, and the National Sports Center are named in his honor. Now, in this video, we are going to see the importance of having the right commander and obeying him. Hi, I'm Jim Taylor. Welcome to In Favor Resources and to the second video in this series entitled, You Are an Army in Indiana, based on a prophetic word by Chuck Pierce given to the Hoosier State. You are an army in Indiana. So we're drawing comparisons between armies in history, in America, in Israel, and the one in Indiana. So you'll need to take your handout. If you don't have it, download it from infavorresources.com. The handout for video number 2 in the series, We Are an Army in Indiana. And there you'll find the first of 12 declarations where we're making those comparisons. The first of 12, and this one is, in Indiana, we obey our commander. See, armies are led by their generals, and navies follow their admirals. And when the Israelites were poised to conquer the Promised Land, Joshua, who was the human commander of the Israeli forces, came face to face with the heavenly commander of the army of the Lord. The passage is on your handout there, Joshua 5. Now, when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" "Neither," he replied, "but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." And Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence, and he asked him, "What message does my Lord have for his servant?" And the commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals. The place you're standing is holy." And Joshua did so. Joshua obeyed. We know from scriptures that Jesus is our captain. Hebrews 2:10, "For it became him for whom are all things and by whom are all things, in bringing many sons to glory, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through suffering." So like any soldier in any army, we must do what our commanding officer tells us to do. Matthew 8, the centurion replied to Jesus, "Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed." Jesus, he was saying, I get this thing about obedience. I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. And I tell this one, go, and he goes. And I tell that one, come, and he comes. And I say to my servant, do this, and my servant does it. And remember, Jesus was absolutely astonished by this. I mean, he didn't come right out and say it, but it was like, why can't you guys be more like this guy? The Lord is our general, and we are a mighty army in Indiana when we obey his commands. Joel 2:11, "The Lord thunders at the head of his army. His forces are beyond number, and mighty is the army that obeys his command." Chuck Pierce said, "You are an army in Indiana." God says, mighty is the army that obeys my command. General Stonewall Jackson learned this lesson. He said, "My duty is to obey orders." General George S. Patton, now these are generals talking, said, "I am a soldier. I fight where I am told, and I win where I fight." There's a great paragraph there on your handout you can read later. It's by G. Campbell Morgan, one of my favorite expositors and preachers, and he's talking about the importance of following a commander who has never lost a battle and never will. And his soldier never will either, as long as he obeys and follows his commander. So turn your handout over. On the back there, there's some space, as there are on all of these, for questions, applications, implications about what it means that we're an army in Indiana. How can we apply this to ourselves and to Indiana today? So here's a couple of questions for you to think about. When you were a child, did your parents have rules that you didn't especially appreciate or understand? Did you obey or not? And what did you learn from that process, if anything? And then now, perhaps you have your own kids, and you're seeing this process from the other perspective. You give them rules that they don't appreciate and don't want to obey, but do they? Do they obey your rules or not? And what are they learning, if anything, from that process? You know, if you're a veteran watching this video, you have some great stories about following orders. And if you know a veteran, you should ask them to tell you some of those stories. But can you think of an instance where God clearly and specifically gave you a command? You knew that you were supposed to do something. And did you obey or not? And how did it turn out? And what did you learn from that process? What do you think the commander of God's armies is telling Indiana, the church in Indiana, to be doing today? Are we obeying? I mean, what might Indiana become if God's army here obeys his commands? If we could sing and really mean, "Where he leads me, I will follow. Where he leads me, I will follow. I'll go with him all the way." We are an army in Indiana, and we obey our commander. Next video, declaration number 2. Because we are an army in Indiana, we have armor that protects us in the battle. Hope to see you then.